All right, guys. It's interesting to me that today is all about pioneering. We have pioneering in fodder trees, re-implementing old systems, pioneering in soil biology. And now that we've got that under our belts, we have another pioneer in growing the plants. We've got Steven Reisner, who, when I asked him for an interesting fact about himself, wasn't quite sure what to tell me. But I noticed that he had dreadlocks down below his butt. So, like, why do you need an interesting fact when you have interesting hair, right? Anyway, I'm going to hand it over to him to talk to us about natural farming essentials. Before I do that, I wanted to mention that Jack has pulled an audible. And the audible is this. After this session, we're going to take a break. And then the four speakers from today are going to come up and we're going to have a Q&A session. So we'll have some Q&A after his presentation. We'll take a little break, come back up here. It may conflict with some of these breakout sessions. You may want to make your breakout session a little later. But with so many pioneers in the room, it just seemed like a good idea to take the opportunity we may never have again and ask some questions. So I'm sure you'll understand that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hope all of you guys are having a good time. If you guys aren't familiar with me, I'm Steven Reisner. I'm the host of the Growing with Fishes podcast. I also have a consulting company to do living soil as well as aquaponic consulting for both mainly geared towards cannabis, but also living soil and sometimes even homesteaders and things like that as well. So we kind of can design any kind of system or anything like that you need, or SOPs for compliance, all that stuff. And we'll talk about that at the end. So today, we're going to talk about natural farming essentials. So today we're going to talk about IMO, indigenous microorganisms. So how to collect the local microorganisms from your property or local area so you don't have to go buy this stuff. There's lots of really awesome biocontrols and bio products out there now, but a lot of them require you to go buy them all the time. And if things got worse and, shit hit the fan, you guys need to be able to make this stuff, right? So we're going to talk about how to do that today so that you guys don't have to be reliant on purchasing things anymore. So we're going to also talk about IPMO, which is this middle one. So this is indigenous pest management organisms. So this is basically a biopesticide that works extremely well on everything from mites, grasshoppers, leafhoppers, ants, all kinds of stuff that normally can be much harder to treat with traditional, more gentle biocontrols. All of these are compliant for both tobacco use and cannabis use as far as smokability after application and safety, as well as vegetables. You can spray your kids with it. You can spray your dog with it. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's totally fine. In fact, I have some IMO, liquid IMO right here. It's super safe. I mean, you can drink this stuff. This is made from a collection from one of Matt's students. And this is just fungi collected from the forest. And we'll go over that. But when your stuff is this safe that you can drink it, and if anyone else wants to try it, you're welcome to. I don't have any communicable cooties. I got tested after I came back from Thailand. Don't worry. I'm just kidding. But yeah, if anyone, they are welcome to try it. I have a whole bucket worth. If you don't want to have that glass, it's fine. We also have lactobacillus, which is here. This is kind of, I very rarely make it less than 5 gallons at a time because I'm always working at commercial farms. Or with aquaponics, we dose it at a 1 to 1,000. So 1 gallon of lactobacillus per 1,000 gallons of system volume in aquaponics to reduce the sludge, increase mineralization. It also can be used as a pathogen treatment. So we're going to go into that. I was one of the first people to do a lot of the research on pathogen treatment using these types of natural farming methods to kind of further increase mineralization in aquaponic systems. I've also used to work for the aquaponics source where we did just how to grow more profitable crops in aquaponics. So we had a whole research lab. So if you have a weird crop or something and you want to know how to do an aquaponics, I've probably grown it or something similar. So I'm happy to help you. Oh, okay. So a little bit about me. I've had my own aquaponic cannabis company for 11 years. I was the first person to put out aquaponic cannabis publications for consumers. I was the first person featured in High Times for aquaponic cannabis. First aquaponic cannabis specific company, constructed the first aquaponic cannabis facilities in both Southeast Asia and in Africa. So I've been doing a lot of cool stuff at a big scale. So if you have any questions on large scale stuff as well, I've done stuff as big as 300 hectares, which is about 758 acres. So we can help you. Oh, wrong boy. Okay, so what is Korean natural farming? So Korean natural farming actually started off in Japan, is where most of this training came from, and then moved over to Korea, and it was developed by the Cho family. I won't go through the whole thing, but you guys can read up on this yourself. And it's kind of developed from there, from the work in the 20s and 30s, kind of before World War II, on what the Japanese were doing to kind of feed themselves and feed the war machine. A lot of those methods were great, organic, very well scalable, and work extremely well for doing large scale organic production. And I'll be honest with you, I can't imagine growing in the tropics, especially, or any high humidity environment like Texas, anywhere in the Gulf Coast, without using these methods. They simply have such an immense impact in reducing molds and other humidity related issues that it's just, to me, is something you absolutely should be doing in your garden. And it's cheap. It's something that you can be doing yourself, making your inputs and not relying on anybody else. Keep going the wrong direction. There we go. So this is the original book by Master Cho, a great one to pick up if you're looking for it. So you want to learn more. So today we're going to talk about IMO, which is indigenous microorganisms. We're going to talk mainly about IMO 1 and 2. These all have different meanings and different processes. I won't go into all the other ones because we'd be here for a while, but this is the wild collection from the forest. This is basically shelf stabilizing those microbes from the forest. This is adding a starch and carbon source. This is adding a nitrogen source, and then this is kind of breaking that down even further. So that's kind of the short gist of it. Then you have liquid indigenous microorganisms, which is the stuff that I just drank in front of you. That's the liquefied version of this, basically the compost tea from either IMO 2, 3, or 4, or 5. All of these can be used to make liquid IMO, depending on how much time you have and what type of resources you have available at the current time of year. And indigenous predatory microorganisms we're going to cover. That's basically the weaponized pest control version of indigenous microorganisms. Again, in my opinion, one of the best breakthroughs that's really come out of it, that was originally discovered by Chris Trump, and we'll go over that. That really saved my butt in Africa when we had tons and tons and tons of grasshoppers really hitting the Cambrian layer of the cannabis plants really hard in Zimbabwe. Totally saved my butt because COVID sealed all the borders, so we couldn't import anything anymore. So if we couldn't make it, we were screwed. So that really, really helped us survive and keep the farm going, even after the virus started to have the outbreak. So we're going to talk about lactobacillus, in my opinion, one of the best things you can put in your garden in terms of pathogen prevention, as well as increasing mineralization. It's perfectly safe to spray near your plants. If your ducks get into it or your fish, it gets near your fish, it's not going to hurt anything. WCA is water-soluble calcium. PWCA is your water-soluble calcium. We're not going to talk about those today. And then you have water-soluble potassium, phosphorus solubilizing bacteria, obviously. So you can really dial in what it is you're wanting to do in the same kind of way as you're used to doing with your synthetic chemicals, simply using our organic inputs. And we're going to talk about that. I'm actually going to show you guys a new tool that's going to be available here in a few months, to make it really, really simple for anybody to really get into this and have a whole game plan for their farm. And we're going to talk about that later on, do a little demonstration for you guys. All right, so this is Jadam. So this is the grandson of Master Cho. He kind of developed a different method. It's, in my opinion, kind of a sloppier, looser version of KNF, but it does have a lot of awesome resources in it, especially on the pest control side, that can really help you if you're having kind of any kind of issues with any of your stuff in your garden. So lots of stuff for mold control and pest control in particular, and also something that's easy to scale at really, really large acreage. So if you're doing ranch scale, it's another good thing that you can consider, and another good book to have in your resources pool in your library. This book in particular is one of the best ones to have for pest control if you're looking for biopesticides. This is a Jadam book and has 167 different garden pests and diseases and how to treat them organically. It covers most of the stuff that you're going to run into in the United States, and really is totally worth it. It's like $50, $40-50. Really, really good book. And again, other resources if you guys want to keep jumping down this rabbit hole. Now you have some good places to go and continue your journey. So some common microbial myths. I'm a big fan of Idiocracy. I don't know about you guys. A lot of people think that fish poop can solve all of your nutrient needs. It simply wasn't designed for that. It will provide a lot of them, but manganese gets oxidized, iron gets oxidized, molybdenum gets consumed over time, especially faster than soil, because you have higher nitrate levels, and the plant has to have molybdenum, or in some cases selenium if it doesn't have any molybdenum, to convert that nitrate back to usable nitrogen form in the plant. So if you don't have enough molybdenum, that can also help do that. And also, if you aren't getting those red pigments in your red lettuce or your red kale and things like that, again, oftentimes it's because you don't have enough molybdenum. At the same time, you can also force that expression with that color by having excess molybdenum. The plant will actually create extra anthocyanin, which is the purple ink compound, to lock up that extra molybdenum so that it doesn't misprocess the nitrogen, have a nitrogen processing issue. So you can actually cause that to overexpress if you're going to have a extra sales boost on an extra red thing for whatever it is you're trying to grow and sell. So if it is anthocyanin based, it's usually you can do that little molybdenum trick to boost it with a little sodium molybdenate or something like that. A lot of people think that microbes can cause big imbalances. Unless you're doing things that are super anaerobic and really toxic, like right at the time, you're not going to have that problem. I do anaerobic ferments all the time around the world. We've run whole hydroponic systems off of just plant ferments and not had any problems. So don't be afraid of anaerobic microbes per se, but if it's really actively breaking stuff down at a time and really, maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks into that fermented process, that's going to be pretty toxic to put on the plants at the time. So definitely consider, is it a finished, completed ferment versus a still active ferment when you get into that stuff. A lot of people think that lactobacillus comes from the stomach of cows. How do you think it got in the stomach of a cow? It's from the grass, right? The cow ate the grass, now it's in the stomach. That's how it got there. So it's not from the stomach of the cow. It's the other way around. Microbes can replicate out of control. Again, trichoderma, if you overuse trichoderma, absolutely can be an issue. But and if you way overuse lactobacillus in particular, you can also have balance issues. But outside of those two, most of the other ones work, pretty well in tandem with most of the other stuff. Not completely, but in general. And then can clog water lines. Lactobacillus actually is a great way to clear your water lines. It will eat the bacterial growth and stuff like that and clear the sludge out. We use it all the time in large DWC systems with aquaponics. When you have all the sludge underneath the lettuce rafts, it liquefies all that silt and crap and all that sludge that just smells horrible and goes anaerobic. Yeah, it smells like sulfur when you scoop it up. It has that like rank, rotten egg smell. Eliminates all that. If you're having a lot of that, put some black worms in there, tunnel down in there, get some oxygen in there because they love to feed on that bacteria. The lactobacillus, and between those two microbes, two helpful organisms, you can eliminate those sludgy areas without the need for any labor or pain in the butt. So why use natural farming? Natural farming, again, is something that you can do with the natural resources from your property and actively gain fertilizer and pesticides from the normal things in your forested areas of your property. And we're going to talk about that today. It often can be used to treat tree diseases. So for instance, if I have a grove of apples and peaches, and I'm having some kind of fungal disease problem like rust or something like that, I can go down the street to a local guy that has a really healthy grove, do a collection there, bring those microbes back, bulk them out in a tea form like we did with the liquid IMO, and apply them or even make a solid IMO and apply them to the roots and actually re-inoculate those plants back with the proper microbes in the roots. And 9 times out of 10, that will cure those fungal diseases and cure a lot of these other pathogens. It won't cure insects, but it will kill fungal pathogens and many other diseases very easily that way, because it's just an imbalance. Someone put the wrong fertilizer or something on it. It exterminated those microbes that were helping to keep that pathogen at bay, and then now you're kind of rebalancing that again as far as the microfauna. So definitely another great resource, especially for tree management. I know our friend Chris Trump that he mentioned earlier runs it on 800-acre macadamia nut farm and has extremely successful. They increased yields over 125% from their original starting point. So you can check out his work on YouTube, and we'll talk about that. We got a link to him on the end. But he's a good friend of both of me and Matt's. He's a good guy. He's the guy who taught me about natural farming. So. All right, so it also increases your base resistance to your plants against diseases and molds. If the plants have a highly diverse microorganism base in the roots, now it basically triggers the genes in those plants to create secondary metabolites against molds and mildews and bacterial infections, so that it has that kind of immune response, the same way that like a vaccine would work for stimulating the immune to make an antibody. It's that same kind of thing, only with the microbes triggering those genes that already exist in the plant. So you're not necessarily vaccinating, just turning those genes on. And what's the secondary side effect of that? What happens when you have more immunoresponse things in plants? Increases flavors. flavonoids, and terpenes, which is flavors, and esters, which is flavors and smells. And now you have a much more flavorful, enriching plant that has a lot more essential oils that are much more healthy for you and tastes better as well. So that if you're selling that at a market, you're actually going to have a much better time selling it because your lettuce is going to taste better than the hydro guy next door who tastes like, water. Yours actually will have flavor because those secondary metabolites have been triggered by the genes that because of the microbiodiversity in the roots, and that's how you increase the flavor of your crops. And it's not super difficult. You just have to give them more microbes. There we go. Okay, so microbial application. This is something I see people do wrong a lot. My favorite is these three-headed sprayers. Okay, they're low pressure. Yes, these crappy Rainmaker ones aren't the best manufactured. They're about $130, but they're low pressure. They're backpack. You can have 4 gallons of it. You can do a pretty good sized garden with one of those in a short period of time. And we went from most of the facilities that I do that aren't using these, when we replace them, they go from taking about 2 days to spray a facility to about a half a day to do about a 12,000 square foot facility. So it really helps reduce the labor time and everything else. If you don't own one, you should. You'll thank yourself after the first time you do it. Also make sure that you're not using foggers or atomizers. They have too much pressure or temperature and they will kill the microbes that you're applying. So you're just putting microbe corpses on there. So now that just feeds the fungal infections or pathogens. And now you're like, wow, this doesn't work. It's made my plants worse. And it's like, yeah, but you killed all the microbes though. Like if you just throw corpses on plants, it's never good, right? Like doesn't work. You got to break them down first. Throw them in the wood chipper, I was going to go on a long joke on that, but I'll save it. You can look up the recipe for FAA. You can replace the fish with other meat sources. I'll leave it at that. So also making sure you have a good accurate scale so you can weigh all of your inputs accurately, especially when you're making IMOs. You need to weigh the equal parts fungi to sugar so that you can properly shelf stabilize them. So that's another thing that you're going to need to make sure that you have, which most people have scales, for weighing various things. All right, so lactobacillus serum. This can really, really help increase plant growth. Now, why does lactobacillus increase plant growth? Because lactobacillus, one of its metabolites from just doing its normal thing, its waste products, is vitamin B complexes. So if the more diverse lactobacillus species you have, the more vitamin B complexes you have as an output. And vitamin B is like Red Bull for plants. It makes it grow faster. We'll talk about another way that you can accelerate plant growth, but that's the reason why. So if you have mixed in some kefir along with the traditional air collected method. So if you do the traditional air collection of lactobacillus, you do rice wash, take your rice, you rinse it off, and then pour that water off and put a piece of cheesecloth on a bowl outside and just let it sit in the shade and collect the spores from the air for a few days. And it will grow a little bacterial layer on top. That's the yeast from the air. So you're going to get yeast and lactobacillus from an air collection. Now you take that, put it into a bucket. You take some kefir grains, order from Amazon or from wherever. I don't know if you have kefir on your site or not. There you go. So you take some kefir grains, throw that in there. Now you have a couple of different ones. You can also get probiotics. If you go to your local pharmacy, you go to the back and ask the pharmacist, they have probiotics for after you take antibiotics at the store. You can throw a couple of those pills in, break those in. Now you've really diversified your lactobacillus and all of it can replicate off of the milk that you're going to put in there. So now you have this huge biodiversity of lactobacillus, getting a ton of different types of vitamin B that are going to be really good at accelerating plant growth. But what else does lactobacillus do? It loves to feed on pathogenic fungi. So you can actually use it to eliminate things like pythium and root rot. Septoria is another one that hits a lot of people with a lot of crops, cannabis in particular. And it comes off the trees. It's naturally on there. So you have to have some kind of defense. If you inoculate that with the lactobacillus, the spores come in and just get eaten by the lactobacillus and never infect the plant. So, and you can even use it as foliar spraying and stuff like that as well. So it's a really, really good tool to have. And you basically take that 4 gallons of milk, let it sit for a couple days, give it a couple of stirs with a lid on it to keep the junk out, and now you have a nice separated batch. You have the curds on top, like as if you're doing cheese making, and then the clear part underneath is your lactobacillus. And then you just take that, dilute that down, either a 1 to 20 if it's a pathogen application, or a 1 to 1,000 if you're using it in the root drench, or a aquaponic system, and away you go. And you can even go as high as 1 to 600 if you're really trying to treat a pathogen, or like even as high as 1 to 20 if it's an emergency. But don't only do that like the first application to kind of wipe out whatever the thing is you're trying to kill, and then back off because you don't want to use too much. The other problem you can have if you overuse it is it's very acidic, right? So you can actually use it as organic pH down in aquaponic systems, especially smaller aquaponic systems. Even if at a dose of 1 to 1,000 dosage, so 1 gallon to 1,000, will actually lower the pH by 0.1 to 1.5. Or 0.15 basically. So keep that in mind. If you're going to dose your pH, dose the lactobacillus first as your normal weekly treatment, and then wait a couple hours and then dose your pH up, just in that order, because you will notice a small adjustment. So here's some lactobacillus pictures. You can see here's your super probiotics. As Matt said earlier, EM1 has it. Here's some fresh kefir grains. These treat botrytis, fusarium, pythium, septoria, all of these things, and it works extremely well. Again, we use it in aquaponics to treat E. coli and salmonella. So even if things as extreme as E. coli, it has no problem exterminating after 30 days. And so we do a weekly treatment for 4 weeks, and it eliminates it completely, even in active commercial systems. So it's a great way to have to not shut down the farm and still have everything be sellable for public sale afterwards, and pass testing once they come back in. And in cannabis, they test every 10 pounds of stuff we grow. So you want to really know what heavy metals are in an area or anything else, ask the cannabis growers, because we have samples from every 10 pounds of biomass that we grow. And we also have pathogen tests. They test all of our stuff for pathogens and pests and disease residues and like all this stuff. So, we have a better idea and more data from even just a single grow than most local farmers do from a whole year. Just because we legally have to for liability. So it really helps us learn a lot, especially with aquaponics. It's really driven an absolutely incredible amount of data collection that we simply didn't have before on nutrient uptake and all the rest of it, because we can also do tissue sampling and all that as well. So here's your curds at the top, like we talked about. There's some lactobacillus. This is just some of those probiotic pills I cracked open in a milk gallon and set it on the counter. It's that simple. Yeah. Just crack the lid on it, and so that you don't have to have the lid pop off and make a mess. So also suggest putting it in the sink, not on the counter, because when it ultimately separates, the curds will kind of come out the top a little. So either pour a little bit, take a glass out of it, or pour it out a little. And then this is what it looks like when you immediately inoculate and the fungi just go crazy. It just absolutely explodes. But no pathogen is going to land in that, right? You have a pathogen trying to get in there. The amount of exudates coming off of this is just going to immediately annihilate any kind of pathogen that comes in there. It's like, it's like landing in the middle of an army. And here's the recipe. So this is what I wanted to kind of give you guys access to. She has access to the deck and all. We can make this available, or if he wants to post the slides.
I will put the deck out on the Telegram after this, so you have the recipes.
Yeah. And it'll take a while to read off, but I'll save everybody that part. But you guys can screenshot that, or they'll make that available. So the other thing you can do with lactobacillus is you can ferment plants with it and unlock all kinds of cool stuff that you can't otherwise do. I can isolate phycocyanin, which is the most energy-intensive molecule that it takes for the photosynthesis chain from spirulina and from other algae, and then give it to the plants directly and basically hit fast forward on the plants and make them grow twice as fast. We can take plants that have been dead for 3 weeks and resurrect them and get new plant growth and branch growth out of dead leaf nodes, all kinds of crazy stuff that just shouldn't really even be possible. So when we're trying to accelerate growth or push yields, I need an organic way that doesn't kill my fish, right? Because I still have, in aquaponic systems, I still have that fish component. I can't just go throw any old hormone I want in there, but we can feed it plant hormones or plant compounds that the plants can easily reutilize. So we're going to talk about all of that, but this is what some of the different cool stuff you can do. So if you're trying to do micronutrients, molybdenum, manganese, things like that, stinging nettle is one of the best plants that you can grow in your area. Just be mindful that it also can bioaccumulate heavy metals. So make sure that the area that you plant it in is clean and it's not going to pull those up into it. But if it's a clean area, one of the best plants you can make for making fertilizer and grow in large patches on your property. Horsetail is another good one. The one thing with horsetail and why it's particularly good to do with lactobacillus fermentation is because horsetail has I can't remember the name of the compound in it off the top of my head at the moment. Normally I can rattle it off, but it has a compound that actually will reduce vitamin B uptake. And by having it with the lactobacillus, which is basically loaded with vitamin B, you're kind of counteracting that secondary negative issue. But the horsetail is really good for adding silica to the system in general. Also be sure that you plant horsetail in an area where you can contain the roots, because it is as aggressive as bamboo or any other extremely aggressive root crop or comfrey. Consider it as dangerous as that. So really put it in a container that you can manage, or don't let it get in the ground unless you really are okay with it taking over that area. You can also use this to get lots of different precursors for different terpenes and flavonoids that you're trying to do as well. And you can check out Luna Whitcomb is another really awesome lady who does really kick-ass work around targeting individual stuff, and she has a lot of different cool plant ferment stuff out there if you want to research her and the work that she's doing. She works over at Skunk Magazine. She's a good friend of mine, and she's another resource if you're looking for really dialing this kind of stuff in. But what you can do is, here's the recipe for the plant labs. If you want to get down this, and you can take any plant that you want, and you can use things like Dr. Duke's database, or I have the Open Nutrient Project, which we're going to talk about here a little bit later on in the presentation, that I put together. Basically a huge database by cross-referencing a bunch of different plant databases, so that there's one place that you can look up, okay, what plants on my property have lots of potassium, which ones have lots of phosphorus, so that you as a property manager can manage the balance between those nutrients and actually come up with an educated nutrient solution for your compost or your ferment or your tea or whatever method and tribe of organic that is that you're comfortable with. So this is the project that I put together. We have a cool new thing that we're going to show you guys that we haven't shown off before. That's a combination of this working with copyleft cannabis or copyleft cultivars, which is another group that I think you guys are going to be really into. So we have all the different nutrients sorted by average minimum parts per million, along with which part of the plant that is from, so that you can accurately create and manage your own nutrient solutions organically. You also have huge databases of other ones where we don't have access to direct parts per million data, but you can still use it to make an educated guess on what's going on. And we also have all the testing. So if you want to check out which local test kits you can get for yourself and do your own testing, how much they are, what parts per million range, how many are in a kit, direct link to the manufacturer's website and all that in one place, so that you can look up whatever nutrient is and the range that you're testing for in your particular solution. So in partnership with them, with copyleft cultivars, so this is a group, I'm on the board, full disclosure, of this group. So this is a group that allows us to open source our seeds. So you might have a family tomato that you've had in your family for 8 generations or whatever, right? You don't want Monsanto or some other company getting their hands on it somehow by buying, you gave a cutting to a friend, and then I somehow ended up having a cousin who worked for Monsanto or whatever. You want to be able to protect that, right? So this group basically allows you to register that genetic sequence from that plant into an open source ledger, so that now that's public knowledge and it can't be patented or abused by corporate America. So this basically gives us a way to do that. And we all do it both with cannabis cultivars, but also with heirloom vegetables and traditional plants and herbs and vegetables from other parts of the world that we want to make sure don't get overly exploited. We can sequence those and tie it to a blockchain ledger and basically have that as a software registration tied to that DNA sequence. And now it basically is public domain and it can't be patented and locked down. So they're a really awesome group. You can check out their website if you guys are interested in getting involved or donating. We're always looking for a little bit better, more way to fund the work that we're doing. We have a really awesome group of international lawyer or two that help us donate their time to help us with a lot of the filings. And it's a really great group. So this is what we've worked on together. So you guys are new to Korean natural farming. You want to do this, but don't know how. You can ask the AI that we built and tell it where you are and say, hey, I want to make compost or KNF inputs or compost teas, whatever your tribe of organic is. It knows them all. And it also knows all the nutrient database that I showed you a second ago. So we can custom formulate to whatever your heart's desire is for plants. And we're working on adding a geography tagging, so it'll know your local. If you just tell it roughly what area you're in, it'll know your local soil chemistry to try and balance around it as well. That'll be in the next phase. We're currently right in the last phase of beta. We're going to release this the next month or two. It'll be a low-cost subscription. You just pay monthly to have access to it. Private AI. Yep. And it's built off of ChatGPT-4 for the brain. All right, so we're going to show this live. All right, so we are in Fort Worth, Texas. Okay. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. And give me 5 crops. Cucumbers, strawberries, peppers, hops, tomatoes. Any others? Kale. And tobacco. And I want a fertilizer using natural farming. Meets the nutrient requirements I need for my crops. Give me a grow plan for my fertilizer production that meets my needs, or that will give me great yields. Here, I'll make this full screen. And then it'll give you a locally sourced one from stuff that you can forage or find in your local area. So when I went to Zimbabwe, I kind of realized all these farmers, like 95% of the farmers are buying from Syngenta. We can fix that. We teach them how to ferment and make compost, do all this, but they don't know how. And a lot of these people don't have a really, the education level there isn't quite equivalent to here. It's probably the nicest way to put it. So giving them access on a phone where they can do this right away, and it automatically gives them the ratios that they need for those crops to be good, gives them the formulations and exact work SOPs to do it, all without having to, know anything other than where they are and what they want to grow. And it already handles over 100 languages. So we can translate this to any culture that we need to, and really help undermine a lot of these bigger, fertilizer companies that are screwing the planet up. You want to do that? This is how we do it. We empower the farmers again and give them the power to fix their problems without having to buy shit anymore. Yep. We're working on the pesticide version of this right now. That'll be the same thing. So that'll be another layer onto this. But the fertilizer is the step one. Yeah. So, if you guys want to check this out, again, this is in beta. We're going to be releasing this to the public here in the next month or two, but it's something that I think is really going to help bridge the world for people that are interested in it, but don't know how to apply it at the scale that they have. This can instantly help you achieve the goals that you're after and give you the custom formulated nutrient solutions with the parts per million of nutrients in mind to be exactly formulated, not that much different than your chemical fertilizer in terms of actual mineral content. So, and if you have that, now you can actually match yields in a way that is much more comparable and rely on it. That's going to actually do that, because a lot of people jump into it and they just don't have the background or know, hey, is this actually going to match my yields? Well, here, it's actually the exact same mineral content as what you're using before. So it's going to do that, right? And here's why. So this is some of the cool stuff that we've been cooking up with copyleft cultivars and Open Nutrient Project. Oh, but here you go. Yeah, you can see it gives you fertilizer, SOP. And if you ask it, hey, I need like whatever, you can get way more detailed than this. This is just trying to give you a quick answer. But I just want to kind of give you guys a demonstration on it and how we're adding many, many new features to this. It's kind of still, again, in the infant form of what this is really going to be when it's finished. But definitely a big game changer for access of education. Okay. So you guys are the first people to actually see that publicly. All right. So this is isolated phycocyanin that I was talking about earlier from spirulina and kelp. We actually use this all the time as a growth accelerator. You can also use it if your plants get attacked by insects or bugs. You have a tree that's really fucked up. I don't know, somebody hit it with a trailer or something. These things happen. It's really good for helping heal the tree and helping it recover and just repair itself. And again, I came up with this with the spirulina and the kelp by accidentally spilling spirulina into a batch of lactobacillus. I was using spirulina for algae control, so you can take powdered spirulina. So you have the grow blocks, and you put them you soak them with water, and you put the seeds in them, and it grows algae on it sometimes, and it can fuck up the seedlings. If you take a little bit of spirulina and mix it in water and just pour that on, the spirulina has a protein in it that kills the algae and prevents the algae growth. So you can use it as just an algae control. So I had it on the counter for that, and had the lactobacillus bucket on it, knocked it into the thing by accident, and I was like, oh, well, like, that's organic, it's labs, it's not hurting anything, and I'm not going to throw away 4 gallons of milk. So we'll just see what happens. And it came up with this brilliant blue color, which you can't even really see on the thing. But if you put this in the sunlight, this turns red. It's the weirdest chromatic color, like, to look at. But imagine, we don't know any of the other ones. So you might find some cool plants in your yard and do lactobacillus ferment, and you might find some other cool plant protein that's now isolated by it, right? The way that I found the phycocyanin. I don't know. Nobody knows, because nobody's doing this yet, right? So all of you guys can be soil citizen scientists and discover all these cool new things from whatever plants that you have in your area. All right, so here's indigenous microorganisms. So this is one of the main staples, if not the best thing that you can put in your garden. You can see this colony isn't quite finished off, but this was when we did wooden boxes in Thailand instead of the baskets. I just needed a quick picture that I had to find for the presentation. But you can see here the active fungal colonizations on here all throughout. You can see the fungi growing on it. Just a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow, but most of this is all white. This is the local fungi and saprophytic fungi, mainly saprophytic fungi, but also yeasts and lactobacillus from your local forested area. This is a great way to kind of preserve those microbes. And what you do is you're going to take this, take rice, cook it 85% of the way in your normal rice cooker. Once it's finished, take it, put it outside in a basket with a piece of screen on top to keep the local squirrels and dogs out. And then in a nice forested area, we have lots of leaf litter and debris, and just let it sit there and collect with a cover to keep the rain off of it for about 5 or 6 days. And then it will colonize with fungi like this. And there we go. There's a better picture. It'll look like this here when it's completed. Or you can see here, it even ate the paper towel that was on top. It was so aggressive. So this is a really, really awesome way to collect your local saprophytic fungi. You can see here, we put the screen on top. Now, this allows you to basically gather all those different beneficial root microbes that you would normally buy in those fungal inoculant. Many, not all, but many of them are actually in this as well. Or they can come in on things like other plant seeds. So for instance, if I was going to grow cannabis on a large scale, or peppers would be another one that really has a similar association. Thyme actually overlaps with 18 different associative fungi with cannabis. So you can put a bunch of thyme down, but also is the same way with peppers. It's the same consortium of fungi. So you can utilize things like ground covers, like thyme in particular, if you really want to boost the fungi levels and kind of act as a shade so that the sun isn't hitting the soil directly. Because if you can shield that sun with even a short layer of any kind of crop, it's going to really help with that water retention and reduce that soil temperature that causes that heat stress on your plants. So we've collected our rice after 5 days of sitting it out in the forest. Now we have this giant block of fungi and rice here. We're going to weigh this, and then we're going to weigh equal weight of sugar, and then we're going to mix it together, and then it's going to end up looking like this. And after about a week or so, it'll liquefy and turn into this brown liquid as the microbes break down. Why do we put sugar in it? Does anybody know why we use brown sugar? You can answer.
So it's unrefined with minerals in it, but the sugar creates a osmotic pressure to draw out and assist the microorganisms in your collection.
So that was partially correct. So the sugar actually creates this osmotic pressure that actually locks out the oxygen and causes the microbes to go into their spore form. Basically, they think that there's something went wrong in the environment, so now they're going to throw a little shell on and then go into dormant phase because of that. And you're not going to get all of them to wake back up, but you get 70-80% of them to wake back up once you put them back into water. So now this is self-stable for years. Okay. And I like doing this. What I'll do is do this once a month, and then I'll label them. And then when I do my actual application, I'll combine last month, this month, and next month, so that we have a good consortium of microbes and microbe diversity. And you'll notice after the second or third year doing it, things will start to grow faster and earlier because you have that colonization going on much faster. Does anyone know who did this the first originally with this type of thing? The Vikings. The Vikings used to take the healthy soil during the peak of the end of the summer and pack it into horns of cows. And then they'd seal the end with wax and they'd bury it deep in the ground below the frost level. What did they do? They preserved those microbes in a non-frozen state so they were alive and active. And then in the springtime, when they had their ceremony, they dig up the horn and break the end off and sprinkle it on the ground. What did they just do? They re-inoculated it and got it a jump start as soon as the soil was awake. And it's the exact same thing that we're doing here, just a little bit different method, right? But this is stuff that we've been doing for a long time. You know, we think a lot of this stuff is sophisticated or we're slick for thinking of it. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. We just forgot, you know. And if you have an aquaponics system, putting this, even just IMO2 into your MBBR or into your main sump and just letting it dissolve and inoculate the system can be great for increasing mineralization and limiting waste. I like to alternate between liquid IMO 1 week at 1 to 1,000 and then lactobacillus the next week at 1 to 1,000. And that between that regular rotation just keeps my aquaponic systems clean, pathogen free. The fish don't get fungal infections anymore. Even if you get bluegills and stuff that love to beat the crap out of each other, we just don't have a lot of the issues that we used to have. So it can be a great way to kind of make your system much healthier without having to do a whole lot. And, you know, making rice and putting it in the forest is like 15 minutes of labor once a month. Like it's not that much work for what it does. So here's liquid IMO. You can see, crap, there we go. Okay, you can see the results of the roots on this, on DWC from a cannabis plant, and it goes absolutely crazy. Guess how long this plant was in this pot when these grew? That plant was in that pot for 18 hours. We put that on top of the beds, and yeah, when you have them fully inoculated, they will grow, you know, a foot per day or more with the roots. It's crazy. Healthy plants grow like gangbusters. If they're happy, they got the microbe consortium, they can put all the energy into growing because the microbes are creating secondary metabolites and triggering those genes that help the plant defend themselves. So now it's not spending as much energy on doing that. So now it can just rip. So, okay, fermented plant LMIMO. So this is another interesting one that I learned from a gentleman in Vietnam named Quan Con Pham. He's a very, very cool dude doing very unique things. But he basically takes liquid IMO, which we've talked about already, where you take the IMO and brew it into a tea. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide. This should have been after that, so I apologize. But you take that and put it into a barrel, keep an air stone in it, and you're going to take plant material the way you would in like an FPJ or fermented plant brew, and then keep adding plant material into it. And then after 45 days, once that fully liquefies, you're going to add more plant material into it. So every 30 to 45 days, you're going to keep adding more. And after about 90 to 120 days, you end up with this super concentrated liquid that has, you know, crazy high mineral content. And these run whole hydroponic systems off of that. Doing just bananas and local root crops and other things for all of his fertilizers. So again, he's on this whole other liquid fertilization method that, check it out, episode 251 in the Growing with Fishes podcast. He talks about this at great length. If you want to learn this method, but his is very unique and different than anyone else's out there. And he's quantifying all of his stuff with a Hanna multimeter. So he actually knows what the ppms are of all of it. Even if he has to do a low fraction test or something like that to get to the range that he needs. So really, really awesome dude. He also does liquid nitrogen fish. So 1 kg of 1 kilogram of fish, 1,000 grams to 200 liters of liquid IMO. It takes about 2 weeks to make a really, really awesome nitrogen fertilizer as well. And I've done that quite a bit for cannabis facilities when we have organic requirements for fertilization. So again, stuff that works extremely well, very cheap, you know, and stuff that you guys have on your farms. So indigenous predatory microorganisms. So this is a method that I've done a lot of in a lot of different places. And I think really something that everyone should really kind of preach to other people. And something I really want to get out there because this is game changing from a pest control standpoint. We've had really, really amazing luck with this. For treating particularly insects that we don't have other solutions for. Again, grasshoppers, leafhoppers, stink bugs, stuff that we simply just, there is no Bavaria bassiana or Asaria fumiceraceae or other good biocontrol that you can use for these guys. You have to make your own. So you can see here, we have our insect frass, in this case crickets, cooked together with rice. So when we make IPMO, we're going to use, for instance, if I'm making a kilogram preparation, we're going to use 300 grams of insects to 700 grams of rice. So that, you know, 1/3 to 2/3 ratio approximately. And that seems to give us the best ratio for the initial collection. And we're basically collecting the fungi the same way we did with the rice for the plants, except now we're going to collect it on insect corpses or insect frass. You can also use crab and lobster meal as well, but make sure you do have some insect in it. But all of it has chitin in it, which is basically you're after the chitin feeding fungi is really what we're after, because they'll feed on insect skeletons just the same. They don't care. We put that out into the forest. You can see here we have our little bamboo fort there for it with our basket and the screen on it. And this is how deep the rice is in it. So you can see it's about this deep, maybe 4 or 5 inches deep. Nothing too crazy. If you make it too thick, it can go anaerobic in the middle. So never go too deep. You want it to be about that 4.5, 5 inch depth on it. The shorter you make it, the quicker it'll colonize anyway. So if it's really thick, it's just going to take longer. Even if it doesn't go bad, it's like you're just wasting time. And then you can see here, when it finishes, it's completely covered in fungi. It's pretty wild how quickly that works. Yes, a little bit of information on that. So this is what it does to caterpillars, for instance, when they get on it. They basically turn into mummies. It's pretty great. So you can do target insect. Now, you're ideally want to collect insects from your property. This is a great job for the kids. Give them a nickel for every 5 grasshoppers or whatever it is that you want to do. It gets them involved. Or put out a bucket with a light on it and just to make a light trap. And that can be a great way to just collect a whole bunch in a short period of time as well. Also a good way to feed your chickens if you want to have a cool, fun thing to feed your chickens. And then alternative, you can use insect frass. If you don't want to deal with all that, or you don't have time, or you don't have access to it because of your time of year, insect frass can be another great resource in place of that for that 30-35% of a mass. So now we have our insect frass and all that. We talked about that. Okay. So this is actual pictures of stuff that I've done here. So you can see the insects actively being fed on by the fungi and broken down. And when you make this into a liquid and spray it on the plants, it kills the bugs that are on there the same way. So here's the recipe. And this is IMO 2. You can take this all to an IPMO 3 and 4 in a similar manner as you would with traditional IMO. The only difference is that you're going to add insect frass again in IMO 3 so that you have that second round of insect chitin to grow the fungi on, to bulk it out. I don't think we go into those. Yeah, we don't go. And if you take the pest control course, we go into some of the more advanced versions. But this is the quick and dirty, oh shit, I got bugs to deal with kind of problem. So this is one bad side. So if you spray your bees directly with it, this happens. So I will forewarn you, if you're going to use it, maybe use it at nighttime in the evening, or just make sure there's no bees on it when you spray it. And again, if you spray the plant and the bee lands on it afterwards, perfectly fine. It's not a residual toxicity. It's just if you spray applicate them and smother them with it, then they're infected with the spores and now they're toast. So just keep that in mind if you're using this. Just be mindful during application. Again, easily solvable by just waiting until the sun goes down when you spray your plants. No big deal. Then you don't have to deal with the bees at all. And there's the liquid IPMO recipe. Again, you're just brewing it up. Now, one thing I've noticed about liquid IPMO, it generally smells like wintergreen or winter fresh when you have a really good batch. I don't know why. That's just the sound or the smell that comes off of it when it's a good brew. I'm not saying yours might be different, right? So you might have a fungi that smells different. So I wouldn't say that's 100%. Like if it doesn't smell like that, it's wrong. Like I'm not saying that, but most of the batches I've done smell like that winter fresh, wintergreen smell from the esters or whatever that's in that particular type of fungi. It's really strange. You wouldn't think insects and sugar and rice would smell like wintergreen, but it does. Here's some more resources for natural farming. We got Matt on there, and then Chris Trump, a good friend of ours, and then Nigel Palmer as well. He mentioned him earlier. He does a lot of weird things with like vinegar fermentation and things like that as well. So he has a lot of research down more acidic nutrient preparations. He also has publicly available databases on his website that are spreadsheets that have the different preparations and parts per million that he's done in the past. I also have that on Open Nutrient Project. We have an area where if you do one, you can submit it there to share with everyone else, and it publishes it, and it has other people's published recipes as well. So it's kind of an active database where everyone can contribute and share what they're doing. And because it'd be way too expensive for me to like test all of these things, I don't have an infinite amount of money to to quantify this, but if I can afford 10, you can afford 5, he can afford 3. Now we can get to solving that in an achievable amount of time. So that's kind of how I see that as a way to finally finish this and give the powers back to the farmers and further improve on that AI's data pool that we talked about. So this is an example of when you put aquaculture water onto the clay soil of Oklahoma. That started off like this. So this is 5 years of doing this at my buddy's farm called Little River Farms. This is just him putting aquaculture water from his koi tanks onto the garden and using this as the main watering source. So even just the microbes from the filters from that can completely convert even really crappy clay soil into really, really rich black gold. Again, another reason to consider, even if you just have room for a couple of tanks in the corner and you want to raise something cool, use that water in your yard. You'll be amazed by how quickly you can have just incredible results. This is my podcast. I have over 1,000 hours of educational content, new episodes every week. You can check all this stuff out. I'm on pretty much every platform. Yeah, here's all my info. I have a couple of different courses. I'm also DEM Pure certified, which is way beyond organic. It's a regenerative. You have to have 10 regenerative loops. So basically you're creating more inputs on your property using your methods than you are consuming. So if you're really trying to, be kind of in a way that's much more long-term sustainable than organic, they're a great certification to strive for. I'm a certified educator in that as well. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I hope you guys enjoyed.
All right, jazz hands. Thank you so much. Questions?
You mentioned not to use foggers for the microbes.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any of these methods where it makes sense to use foggers for, or should I just throw my foggers out?
Sure. So foggers are great if you're going to do things like what the hell is it called? In Thailand they call it white oil. What's the one for mites they use here? The petroleum one, the BioWorks mix. Hold on a second.
I don't think Grazon's the answer.
One second. Is it this one? I can't remember. Sulfoil X. This is the one I use. Sulfoil X. So that if you have Sulfoil X or white oil, agricultural white oil or agricultural mineral oil, perfectly great for that because it makes that fine mist that's going to suffocate them. I really like, so if you're going to, say you take cuttings or clones of anything, trees, cannabis, allegedly, whatever else you're doing, you're going to take about a shot glass worth of the Sulfoil X or white oil into a 5-gallon bucket, get 2 pasta strainers, put your clones in there, cuttings, whatever, dip them with two pasta strainers, so you sandwich it in between, give them a good couple of dunks, or when you take your cuttings, just take your cuttings and throw them right in the bucket and give it a quick stir once in a while so that everything ends up submerged, and you can completely clean off spider mites, russet mites, broad mites, aphids, powdery mildew. Anything that's on those cuts is not going to be on, unless it's internally infected, it's not going to be on the cuttings. And it can be a great way to just, as you're doing your normal process, sterilize all of your plants in that process as well. So that'd be the other good use for that particular oil. But that's really the only thing we ever use the foggers for, is for that particular application. And it's because it's one of the only things that's safe for us to use in veg.
Okay, I have a question from online from Jerry wondering, what would you do about fire ants?
Fire ants. So IPMO works really good on that. We actually had ants that would, and I have video of this on my YouTube channel, of ants that would tunnel into the stalks of the cannabis and basically create a nest inside the plant and kill them. So we had to find a way to deal with that. So the other thing I would recommend is metarhizium. There's a biocontrol microbe fungi called metarhizium. Metarhizium is the other thing that works extremely well against ants and termites. It can be a great thing if you have a termite issue. You can kind of go balls to the wall with it on your property, and you're not going to hurt anything except for the ants, really.
Okay, so this is a beginner question. Let's say you have a partner named Bob, and he's making a lot of labs on the counter. And you've got someone named Jess that was like, I don't like the way the top of that lab works. Like, how do you know if a lab is not, if it goes bad, if there's a little red bloom on the curds or whatnot, or everything under it is going to be fine? How do you tell Jess not to worry about it, or when Jess should worry about it?
Sure. So it should be white if it's just plain lactobacillus. I haven't seen pink or orange on it. I've seen it on liquid IMO or in the IMO collections. And it's usually because the rice is too wet. So maybe if you had too much water and not enough milk ratio, I could see that potentially causing that bloom. But that's the only thing. Otherwise, lactobacillus is incredibly aggressive. I mean, you could take a bucket of labs, take a dump in it, and drink it a week later, and the microbes would have killed every pathogen in there. I mean, I'm not recommending it, but you wouldn't get sick.
Okay, well, he's gonna like quote you now saying that forever.
That's fine. The original quote's from Chris Trump, so you can.
Would you? Oh, so this is from Eka Mouse. Would you add H2O2 or Epsom salts to your process?
I would not add peroxide. The only time I would do peroxide, maybe would be if I had really old seeds. I would maybe give them a quick peroxide rinse, and then I would inoculate them with like a liquid IMO dip. But that's the only time I would do peroxide. Peroxide, here's the problem: it burns the plants, and especially if I have a plant like cannabis or anything with flavor, mint would be another good example, that has trichomes, that have trichome heads. That's where your flavor production is, right? So if I oxidize that in cannabis, that converts THCA to THC or THC to CBN. Well, THC to CBN takes your psychoactive to a sedative, right? So, like just in that case, but that applies to many other types of plants as well. You're oxidizing whatever those essential oil compounds are on the leaf surface. So, I'm not a fan of peroxide, and it just reduces microbial populations in it, unless you had a really low oxygen environment. The only time I ever use peroxide or even keep it on why we even keep it on properties is because if I have a power outage, depending on the fish density, there's a ratio for all this. But in general, say if you had an aquarium at home, you can do a shot glass every 60 to 90 minutes in a 30-gallon aquarium to keep the fish alive. You can provide enough extra oxygen in the water to kind of limp them along in a power outage type situation or something like that. But that's really the only reason why it's just kind of an absolute last resort and emergency to keep the fish alive if the generator doesn't fire up or some other crazy shit happens like that.
So I'm in a arid mountain climate, and we struggle a lot with yellow jackets, especially in the summertime. Would IPMO applied directly to the nest be a good option for that?
Absolutely, yeah. Spray a couple of them to get the spores into the nest, and then spray the nest at night, and yeah, you'd wipe them out.
I'm wondering about IPMO for stem borers in squash plants.
Okay, Matt, can I talk about the insect frass tea thing?
Yeah.
The tree one?
Yeah.
Okay, so Matt actually is probably the better person to ask on this particular question. But Matt, and I'm just repeating, I'm going to actually, you know what? Yes, let's do that because Matt actually could speak on this even better than I could because he's actually. Oh,
You're the first panel question.
Okay, yeah, we'll save it for the panel question because
You're first in line for the panel.
Yeah,
I
that
feel
would be a good one.
privileged that I thought of that good of a question.
Yes. All right, guys, let's give jazz hands one more time. Let's take a 15-minute break and we'll start the panel.